You know something? We all grow up carrying this strange feeling inside us, this unshakable belief that life keeps a scoreboard somewhere, like there is some invisible judge sitting in the clouds, pencil in hand, tallying up every good deed and every bad choice. Be kind and the universe will smile back at you. Be cruel and sooner or later, the world will hunt you down and make you pay. It is a whisper we hear in every bedtime story, in every warning from our parents and grandparents, in every moral tale we absorb as children. This invisible rule wraps itself around our bones and becomes part of how we see everything. But here is the thing. Look around you. Really look. There are cheaters and liars who live in mansions, who sleep soundly on silk sheets, who never seem to face a single consequence. There are gentle souls who give everything they have, who pour out love like water, and yet they drown in suffering. I have watched people fall to their knees, crying out to the heavens, asking what horrible sin they must have committed in some forgotten lifetime to deserve the agony they endure right now, and that breaks my heart more than anything else. To suffer once from the pain itself is cruel enough, but to suffer twice, once from the wound and again from the crushing belief that you somehow earned it, that you deserved it, that is torture of a different kind entirely. We have taken something alive and turned it into a dead system of cosmic accounting, as if the entire universe were nothing more than a shopkeeper, with a ledger, recording every transaction, demanding payment for every debt. But the world does not operate like a marketplace. The soul is not a spreadsheet. What most people call karma today is nothing but a soothing fairy tale, a comfortable lie we tell ourselves, not the actual truth of how things work. Let us dig into the word itself. In Sanskrit, karma simply means action or doing. It comes from an ancient root that means to act, to make, to create. In its purest, most basic sense, it just points to the fact that you are doing something, anything. But somewhere along the way, in the vast landscape of Indian thought, this simple word picked up extra weight. It started carrying a meaning much like what we call cause and effect. People began saying that if your life is going well, it must be because you did good things before. If your life is falling apart, you must have done something terrible to deserve it. This was not just one opinion floating among many. It became the very air people breathed, the ground they walked on. It was as obvious to them as the fact that the sun rises every morning. Nobody questioned it, nobody debated it. And from this tiny seed, a massive tree grew, a whole structure of belief about how our actions today shape our fate tomorrow, and how the echoes of what we do ripple forward through time. In the ancient wisdom of India, whether you look at Hindu teachings, Buddhist philosophy, or Jain practices, karma was woven into a much bigger picture. It was not just about actions leading to results. It was about how those results stretch beyond the boundary of one single life. The intentional things you do, they said, decide where you will be born next, what kind of body you will have, what kind of pain or pleasure you will experience. This happens again and again in an endless spinning wheel called samsara, the cycle of birth and death and birth again. So the yogi meditating in a cave, the monk walking barefoot through the dust, the devoted believer praying at dawn, they all had one goal. Stop creating new karma, bring the wheel to a halt. Freedom, whether they called it moksha or nirvana or liberation, meant breaking free from this relentless cycle. To be free from karma was to be free from having to be born again, to step off the wheel entirely. Most teachers, both in the East and the West, have taken this goal very literally. They imagine it as if through the right techniques, the right discipline, the right rituals, you could actually change the mechanics of the universe itself and escape from birth and death forever. They picture it as though karma were real machinery that you could dismantle with enough effort. But I want to suggest something completely different. What actually happens in the deepest moments of true practice is not that you escape from a real prison. It is that you wake up and realize the prison was always imaginary. Liberation is not breaking out of chains. It is seeing that the chains were never there except in your own mind. The wheel stops turning because it was never really turning at all, except in your thoughts. You have to understand something important. For the people who lived inside this ancient way of seeing the world, it was not a choice. Nobody woke up one morning and decided whether karma and rebirth were real or not. These ideas were simply the shape of reality itself, as solid and undeniable as the earth beneath their feet. It was the atmosphere they moved through every single day. In exactly the same way, people in medieval Europe knew absolutely that the heavens were made of crystal spheres turning in perfect circles, or that the earth was flat with edges you could fall off. These were not theories. They were facts. Nobody argued about them. They were just the way things were. And because they were the way things were, thinking differently was almost impossible. This is why waking up from such a deeply embedded vision is never easy. It is like pulling out the very frame through which you see everything. A frame so old, so familiar, that you do not even notice it is there shaping every thought you have. In our own history, we have watched certain ways of seeing the world quietly fade away like morning mist. You can never prove there are no angels hovering in the sky. You can never prove there is no golden throne in the clouds. You can never prove that souls are not weighed on scales after death. Yet for so many people, these images have lost their power. They grow dim not because someone disproved them with mathematics or experiments, but because they no longer fit with how we understand the world now. For the same reason, the old Indian picture of the cosmos, with its elaborate laws of karma and its cycles of rebirth, can begin to feel unnecessary. It does not match the scale or the meaning of the world as we now see it. And when a story stops explaining things, when it stops helping us make sense of our lives, it falls away on its own. Just as science in the West dissolved the heavens that Dante described, so in the East, the deeper insights born from meditation can dissolve the entire cosmos of karma. Even within the ancient teachings themselves, karma can be heard in two very different ways. To most ears, it sounds like the law of cause and effect. One thing happens, and then another thing follows, like a cart rolling behind an ox. This is the view that sees events stretched out in a line, one after another through time. A deed here, a result there, connected by an invisible thread. But there is another way to listen to it, not as a chain of separate causes, but as the simple fact of action itself, where the doing and its result are not two things but one. It is like the way a figure and its background belong together, or the way a wave and the ocean are distinct enough to speak about separately, yet they arise together, inseparable, one thing, not two. In this second way of understanding, karma is not something you possess or create. It is the pattern of everything happening right here, right now, all at once. The idea that one event must force another event to happen is so deeply woven into how we think that we barely notice it anymore. We talk about causes and effects as if there were some invisible hand pushing the world forward, some ghostly force making things happen in sequence. But if you look closely, really closely, what we call a cause is often just our way of organizing our description of things. When a tree falls and makes a sound, these are not two separate events connected by some mysterious link. They are two different ways of talking about one single happening. The must that we imagine in nature, the necessity we feel, is not actually in the wood or the wind. It is in our habits of thinking. When you see through this ghost, when you recognize it for what it is, the chain of necessity stops looking like a law of the universe and starts looking like a pattern in the mind. Think about the simple fact that living things eat. We often say they must have food in order to live, as if living and eating were two separate things joined by some rope of necessity. Life over here, food over there, connected by an invisible thread. But in truth, to be alive is already to be in the constant act of taking in the world, transforming it into yourself, and being transformed by it in return. Hunger is not some separate force driving the creature toward its meal. It is simply the first movement of eating itself. And when food runs out and the body dies, we say it died because it had no food. But this is just describing the same single event from a different angle. When you look closely enough, the word because starts to disappear. What we thought were cause and effect turn out to be just two faces of one happening. When we split events into cause and effect, we imagine there must be a bridge between them, some mechanism by which one is converted into the other. Yet this bridge is never actually found anywhere. How does the lack of food produce death? As if the absence of something could reach out and push something else into existence. It is more accurate to say that the absence of food is simply the same process as the organism ending, described from another perspective. The same puzzle shows up when we talk about mind and body as if they were two different substances, one somehow influencing the other across a gap. We create the gap ourselves, and then we scratch our heads wondering how it could be crossed. In this way, our explanations often make the mystery deeper instead of clearing it up. See this clearly, and the chain of causation starts to look less like a law and more like a habit of cutting apart what was never divided in the first place. Pick up a stone and let it drop from your hand. We say it falls because of gravity, as if there were some invisible rope pulling it toward the ground. But imagine if you let it go and it floated up instead. We would not call it a stone anymore. We would call it a feather or a balloon or a piece of paper, because falling when nothing holds it up is simply part of what we mean when we say stone. In the same way, a sunflower turns its face toward the sun, not because it is obeying some command from outside, but because that is what it means to be a sunflower. A plant that did something else would be a different kind of plant entirely. So the must in nature is often not a force at all. It is a matter of definition. Our way of speaking about what belongs to the very nature of a thing. What we call necessity in the world is more often necessity in thought. It belongs to the way we arrange reality in our minds, rather than to reality itself. A stone must fall, fire must burn, but this must is not a hidden power inside matter. It is the rule we use to decide what counts as a stone, or what counts as fire. Logical necessity is different. If all humans are mortal and Socrates is human, then Socrates must be mortal, not because the universe forces it, but because it is bound up in the meaning of the words themselves. Many so-called laws of nature work the same way. They are the regular patterns by which we see, not commands given by the world independent of our seeing. Imagine laying a sheet of graph paper over a flowing river. The water has no idea the lines are there, yet you can describe its movement using squares and angles and coordinates. This is how it is with the patterns we use to measure the world: height, width, depth, the passing of hours and minutes. These are not threads woven into the fabric of nature itself. They are grids we lay on top of it. When we speak of the laws of nature, we are often speaking of the regularities in our own patterns, not some hidden machinery inside the world itself. Triangles, circles, measurements of time, these are our ways of fitting the living, breathing movement of reality into forms we can count and calculate. The world does not need them to be what it is. We need them to see what we see. So if we are going to speak of karma at all, let it not be as some ledger of debts owed and payments due. Let it be the pattern of our being in relationship to everything else. You can think of yourself as a kind of instrument, receiving the world and sending it back out again in the same breath. Every note you play is shaped by the world that formed you, and every note you send out shapes the world in return. It is not that the universe sits waiting to repay you in kind like some cosmic accountant. It is that what you are is the very way the world appears to you. The music you create is the music you hear. The gesture you offer is the gesture that comes back. In this sense, karma is not a law hanging over you like a sword. It is the natural give and take of existence itself, present in every single moment. To see karma this way is to be free from the burden of an imaginary judge. You are no longer stuck thinking that your happiness and pain are payments delivered by some invisible hand keeping score. You are no longer afraid that every step you take is carving an inescapable destiny into stone. The patterns we inherit, whether from ancient scriptures in the East or modern sciences in the West, are not chains wrapped around reality. They are shapes in the mind, ways of organizing what we experience. Karma is not a decree handed down from above. It is the echo of your own song. It is the way the pattern you are meets the pattern of everything else. And the two are not separate. Whatever you send out returns, not as reward or punishment, but as the shape of the whole meeting itself in you. The kindness you extend is the kindness you live inside. The bitterness you pour out is the bitterness you dwell among. In this, freedom is not running away from the world. It is knowing that you are moving with it, either in harmony or in discord, and that the music is always yours to play.